Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Thank you for attending this presentation. In order to honor your Sunday, I will go through this presentation as efficiently as I can and leave the Q&A at the end. My team, Maureen and Elizabeth, are going to take note of your questions. Please write them in the chat area, and at the end, I will address them in the order they came in. To start, I would love it if you could write down on the chat area the country you are from. Now, what would you say if I told you that there is a simple system to help you eliminate the beliefs and behaviors that are preventing you from feeling fulfilled? Would you want to learn? Yeah, the obvious answer is yes, because you're here with me today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Waleuska Lazo, and I am the founder of the Gratitude Experiment and the FMTG course, which stands for 5 Minutes to Gratefulness. Today's topic, how to overcome your limiting beliefs to unleash your potential, is a sample of the many things I teach in the FMTG course. So today I will share the process that about 1,000 students from 83 countries have learned and who are now living more empowered and grateful lives. Since I was a child, I was told that I was a storyteller, and I believed it. So today, I'd like to start with a story that embodies what we are here to learn. Catherine, one of my students, suffered from severe depression and multiple suicide attempts. And she has spent the last part of her life in and out of rehabilitation centers. All her emotional dis-ease was produced in her childhood. As a child, her father molested and abused her. And so she grew up feeling that she was unworthy. And this is a quote that she sent to me at the beginning of the course. I have spent most of my life actually hating myself, feeling worthless, dirty, and unworthy of love. And so that's precisely what I attracted. I have spent my whole life destitute of inner peace, self-love, respect, or appreciation of my strengths and talents. Now, Catherine has been practicing FMTG for about 3 months now. And this is what she now tells me. Since starting FMTG, every single thing that was wrong with me is now right. The practice of FMTG is absolutely responsible for my reawakening. For the first time in my life, a magical world is opening up with a glimpse of what is really out there for me. I believe that things happen for a reason. My life experiences may have let me believe that I was a victim, but now I believe I am a warrior who is strong, resilient, and proud of coming out of hell with wisdom and strength. I really pinch myself every day and give massive thanks that my anxiety is virtually gone. I now believe that I am enough. Thank you, Catherine. When I was a little girl, I grew up in an island called Corinto in Nicaragua, Central America. And the island was visited by 3 to 5 different circus that would come in the summer months. And as a child, that was a huge source of happiness for me. I just loved going to the circus. My grandfather was one of the few doctors on the island, so he happened to be the doctor of choice for the performers. And during the day when he would go and do his rounds, I got to tag along. And so I got to see the circus behind the scenes. And behind the tents, they had an area that was gated by a chicken wire fence with wooden posts. And 6 massive elephants would be there roaming around. And I always wonder, how was it that they didn't escape? I mean, they were massive and they could just go right through the gate. Later, I learned that when a circus trains an elephant, and this one is small and weak, they tie one of the legs to a rope or a chain to a wooden stake. And initially, that elephant tries to break free from the rope, but it's too strong. So it tries and tries and tries, and eventually the elephant is convinced that breaking free is impossible. Years later, when that baby elephant has grown to 6 or 7 times her size and strength, she's still easily constrained by the light rope and thin wooden stake. You see, the elephant formed a belief about her limitations when she was small and remains convinced that for the rest of her life, what was once true will always be true. She remains imprisoned by her own belief when clearly she has the strength to free herself at any moment. I love this story because it hits home. We are that elephant. And so my question to you all is, what is that rope on your ankle that keeps you from running free? What is that chicken wire fence that keeps you confined to dreaming small? As I go through this presentation, I invite you to think of ways in which your beliefs are causing you pain or preventing you from making the best choices to reach your dreams. The biggest challenge I have found in helping my students eliminate and heal their limiting beliefs is that many of them don't know what their limiting beliefs are. So today, I will shed light on how you can go about identifying what your limiting beliefs may be, how they are formed, reinforced, how they affect us in our daily life, and how we can change them. Everything we do, the way we relate to the world and to each other, every problem and challenge that we face in our lives is tied to our belief system. So what is a belief? You may be asking. A belief is an idea, an opinion, or a statement of reality that we accept as true. And so we operate our lives based on the beliefs we have. And these beliefs can be empowering or limiting. 95% of our beliefs are unconscious, which means that we're not even aware of the beliefs we may have that drive us to do the things that we do. When we see or hear something, our brains generate a thought. And so we proceed to assign meaning to the thought. And what you need to understand is that without that meaning, a thought remains just a thought and holds no power over you. Almost every single major belief we have is generated in childhood. And we learn them from our parents, our caregivers, such as teachers, our peers, and our environment. Beliefs are formed in response to what we hear others tell us on a consistent basis. They're also formed based on what we may hear our caregivers and peers say to each other on a consistent basis. And the most important, on what we see them do on a consistent basis. Because our minds are always observing. We're always watching and seeing the reactions our caregivers and peers have and how they behave in their world. When we are born without knowing distinctions or limitations. When we are a year old, did we know that putting our hand on the hot stove was going to hurt? No. Did we know that playing a snake is dangerous or something to be feared? Or that flying like Peter Pan is not possible? Of course not. When we come into this world, we don't know if we are important or not. We don't know what good enough is. We don't know whether life is hard or easy. Those are things we learned from the people closest to us. And this formative process happens between birth and age 9. When we're young, we are like sponges, and we are in a programmable stage. And everything that we see, hear, and experience is imprinted in our subconscious mind. Now, our belief systems will vary from person to person. But like the baby elephant, each one of us, at some point in our childhood, were told that there was something that we couldn't do, or perhaps that there was something wrong with us, and we accepted that as true. So here's the secret, guys, and I'm going to give it away right at the beginning of the presentation. Just because you've had a belief doesn't make it true. And you can choose to let go of that belief at any time. How do we form beliefs? In two ways. We either adopt or take on the beliefs of the people around us, or we create beliefs through the meaning we assign to things. When we are children, we want three things: love, attention, and validation. We learn to behave in accordance to what we observe and hear, right? I had friends that told me that they left their kid a little too long in the crib, and they came and they found them eating poop, right? And I'm pretty sure that kid very quickly realized that that was not a behavior to be had when they saw their mother react and scream, perhaps. When you're getting potty trained and that kid does its business in the toilet and the mother claps and says, "Oh, honey, great, I'm so happy, good boy, good girl," and they give you a nice treat, just like, when we're training a doggy, same thing, right? That kid realizes, I guess this must be the way to do my business. So we look at our parents for approval, and based on those reactions, we form our beliefs. So I'm going to give you an example of how I created a belief purely out of the meaning that I attached to it, even though the reality was probably completely different. So I would come home, sometimes excited, wanting to tell my mother something. And my mom was a very busy person. We had a big home. I had 3 brothers, and it was just a busy household. And she never stopped doing what she was doing. So I would be talking to her and she was multitasking. So there was not a lot of eye contact. And half the time I felt that I would speak to her back or to her side. So I gave a meaning to that. My father, as I mentioned, was in medical school. He was studying all the time. And so I would go to him, Daddy, I want to tell you something that happened. And he would say, "Oh, honey, I'm busy right now. Can we talk later? I'm studying." So I gave it the meaning that I was not important. I felt ignored. Or perhaps that what I had to say was of no value. I remember coming home and I had a B in facet, but everything else was an A, and I was proud. And I came home and I showed the report card to my mom, and my mom was not very affectionate. She just didn't know how to show her emotions, so she didn't say much. Then I showed it to my dad, and he immediately asked, "Why is this a B? You can do better," right? Instead of focusing on all the A's, he looked at the B. And so I gave a meaning to that I can't do anything right. But then I noticed something. I finally came home with a straight A report card, and everyone celebrated me. My dad and my mom, who are always busy, actually gave me attention, and they spent time with me. And my dad would tell me about the importance of an education, the importance of achieving things. And he said to me, "You always have to be the best." Right? Because I was a girl, right? We are taught that in a men's world, we have to try harder and we have to be better than everybody else. Not just better between our gender, but better, among everybody. So I gave it a meaning as well, that achieving was important. And this was reinforced when I went to my grandfather, who I had on a pedestal, but he hardly gave me the time of day. And so I told him I had learned a poem from a very famous poet, and he said to recite it. So I did, and I could see how proud he was. And during that moment, I was all that mattered. I was his world. So I assigned a meaning to that as well. And this is what I assigned. That to get them to love me, to give me attention, I had to excel academically. So I formed the belief that my worth was defined only in knowing important things. And that if I was not learning smart things, if I was not being the best academically, then I had no worth, and that they wouldn't love me. You see, once a belief has formed, it becomes a wired program in our subconscious mind. And that conditioning we accepted at a young age stays with us forever. So this affected me my whole life. Because if I was not the best academically, I felt unworthy. And so imagine the burdening of this. We all know that it doesn't matter how smart we are, there will always be someone smarter. And so if I was tying my self-worth to that, what do you think was going to happen? Yeah, I was going to have a life of inadequacy and always feeling less than others. And that worsened when I came to Canada at age 16. And I came to school without the language. And so I went from straight A's to C's. So I felt I had no value. And that if I had no value, I was not going to be seen. I would not matter, and people would not like me. So beliefs are reinforced through repeated criticism. If you were the kind of child that was criticized by a parent, why can you put your toys away? Why can you clean your room? In the best one, comparison. So beware, parents. Why can you be more like your sister or your brother or that friend? That's devastating for a child. So please beware and don't compare your children. Or if your teacher constantly corrected you, go do this again. Your writing's too messy. You can do better. Or if you were the kind of kid who spilled things like I did, why can you ever hold your glass properly and not spilled? Why are you so clumsy all the time? Do you always have to make a mess? So the beliefs that gets reinforced for that child is that I can't do anything right. We reinforce our beliefs through what we hear in the background. So be careful, parents, of what you say and do. You may think your child is out in the corner playing games or on their phone, but they have eyes behind the back of their necks. They are watching you, okay? They are observing everything we do. So I had a student who believed that money was scarce and difficult for him to make, and so his business would always suffer. And when we dug deeper to the root of this belief, we discovered that when he was a little boy, his parents would always complain about not having enough money to pay the bills. He told me that each time he would ask for a candy or a toy, he was told that, not now, honey, we don't have enough. And so if he kept on asking for things, his father would tell him, money doesn't grow on trees. So he grew up thinking and believing the money was scarce, right? Because there was never enough. That meant the money was difficult to make. That mentality in his business. On the other hand, I have a friend who, from a very early age, saw his parents donate and support charities in any way they could. So he formed the belief that money must have been abundant, right? That obviously there had to be enough money to go around in order to give some away, and that giving money away was a good thing. So these are examples of beliefs that are not even ours. We adopt them from someone else, right? And like this, there are a ton of beliefs that we carry with us our entire lives because we adopted them from the people closest to us. Another student of mine told me that, we had to change his mentality of scarcity. And when we went through his behaviors and where this came from, he finally realized that when he was around 10, one of his teachers who had a huge impact in his life had grown in the Depression era and was a Holocaust survivor as well. So her mentality was one of scarcity. Everything was too expensive. Things cost so much money. We always have to save for a rainy day, because at any point we could lose everything. And so that belief stayed in his head. And today he is successful and abundant. And yet he still believes that he doesn't have enough, that everything costs too much. My grandmother, I grew up with her on my formative years, and she would walk around the house. Her famous mantra, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not need." God always provides. And I grew up constantly hearing this. And so when I grew up and at my lowest points financially, where I didn't even know if I was going to have enough money to buy lunch, I never worried because I knew that through that belief that somewhere, somehow, God would provide. Now, that was a very good, thought to adopt. But this goes to show you how it can go both ways. Okay, our beliefs gets reinforced through behaviors we observe. If you grew up seeing discord in your household, if your parents constantly yelled at each other and fought, and you saw your mother cry often, you may form the limiting belief that being yelled at and mistreated is normal and acceptable. I mean, after all, your mother put up with it. So that must be how it is. And later in life, you may attract relationships that mimic your parents' negative relationship because that is what is familiar to your subconscious mind. That's what's imprinted. So these beliefs that we form in childhood stay with us forever unless we choose to change them. And they will show up in all kinds of unexpected and unwanted ways. According to Dr. Bruce Lipton in his book, Biology of Belief, he says that beliefs affect us at the cellular level. And we may pass down those beliefs to our children, just like our parents passed down their beliefs to us. And these beliefs can inhibit or free you. They can paralyze you. And they can make you soar free, depending on what beliefs you choose to adopt and have. Right? Limiting beliefs can stunt your options and fulfillment in every area of your life, from your career, finances, to relationships. They can stop you from feeling joyful, from being able to go after your dreams. I, for example, as a child, saw that the people I needed the most left me. My mom was never home because she had to financially support the household. So she would leave early in the mornings, I was sleeping. And sometimes she would come late at night and I was already sleeping. So I didn't get to spend a lot of time with her. My father was a medical student and there were no universities on the island. So he had to spend time away. So as a result, I was left in the care of my nanny, who for all intents and purposes was my primary caregiver and my mother. But she was young and she was boy crazy. And sometimes she would disappear for 2 weeks at a time, months at a time. And my parent, especially my dad, would have to go and find her. I was so attached and upset by her absence that I would not eat. So I associated their absence with abandonment. Later, I grew up, and the best schools were the private schools, and there were no private schools in the island. So my parents shipped me to a different city, and they dropped me there. They left me in a boarding school. So I felt abandoned. So my limiting belief became that loving and needing people will lead to pain. And so how has this belief affected me on my daily life, you may ask? I unconsciously did not want to need anyone. I became extremely self-sufficient. I never allowed myself to be vulnerable enough to love deeply because I was protecting my heart in case they too left. So I tended to engage in relationships with men that were emotionally unavailable. Your beliefs may affect the way you think about yourself and the world around you. If, for example, you have the belief that you're not good enough, and that the only way that makes you feel good enough is through achieving things, and you're working on a proposal to gain a new account for your business and you don't get it, guess what? You're going to be devastated because your limiting belief will have you feel like a failure, like a loser, right? That you're not smart enough to obtain the business. And the long-term effect of that belief can drive you to not take risks, not to try new things, because you're constantly equating failure with something bad, right? And if you failed, you may feel that you won't be accepted or loved or admired. If, on the other hand, you believe that you are capable and the failures are part of the learning process, you're going to look at that exact situation with a whole different set of lenses. You're going to look at that rejection and it won't stop you because you're going to say to yourself, okay, I'll do better next time. And I will get their account next time. So that is a more empowered way of living the world. Thomas Edison made 3,000 attempts to design the inexpensive light bulb we know today. Although he was not the first to invent it, he was the first to succeed. So clearly, Edison did not have the limiting belief that he was not smart or capable enough. He also did not believe, obviously, that failures was something to be avoided or feared. When a reporter asked him, how did he feel to fail so many times? He laughed and he said, I didn't fail. The light bulb was just a process that took 3,000 steps. So how we go about finding what your limiting beliefs are? Since limiting beliefs are unconscious and invisible, we need to look at things that we can see. If you think about it, if we really think about it, we never saw not good enough, right? We never saw I'm not important enough. What we saw perhaps was our parents or teachers or significant other correct, criticize, or ignore us. So the only place where not good enough exists is in our heads. Remember my student Catherine at the beginning, who was molested by her father, who felt she was unworthy? Well, she never saw unworthy. She never saw not good enough. She never saw powerless. That is something she created in her head. So to find your limiting beliefs, you need to look at your patterns of behaviors, the things you do on a consistent basis. And I'm going to take you through a few examples and see if any of them resonate with you. Are you the kind of person that in a business meeting, you don't say much? You know, you write things down, you're engaged, you listen, but you don't contribute anything. You don't ever raise your hand. Or the kind of person that in a lecture hall sits all the way in the back, hoping the teacher won't see you, so it doesn't ask you any questions. Or in social settings where you don't make a lot of eye contact and you like being under the radar. Under those behaviors, there's an underlying message that says, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough to participate. I have nothing to say that others will find of value. Are you the kind of person that when asked to work extra hours or to go into the office on your weekend and you don't get compensated, you don't ask because you're afraid to rock the boat? The type that never asks for a raise or asks for anything that's important to you. Under those behaviors is the underlying limiting belief that says, I'm not worthy of receiving. I don't deserve more. Do you attract relationships where your needs are never met? Where you always go out of your way to compromise, to meet the needs of everyone else before your own? Relationships where you're the one that's giving more, doing more, pleasing more, loving more. Under those patterns of behavior, the underlying limiting belief says, I am not important enough. I don't matter as much. I am not worthy of having my needs met. Or perhaps you're the kind of person that attracts relationships that are abusive and violent. You get screamed at, cheated on. Your partner tells you hurtful things and you put up with them. In those behaviors is your underlying limiting belief that says, I'm not lovable. Who would want me? God, I better make this work or else I'll be alone, right? Because I don't deserve better. One of my students came into the course and says he was unhappy with his life. He said that people took advantage of him, they betrayed him, felt used in his relationships. And after a careful an examination of all his past behaviors, he started to notice patterns. He said that if they went out to eat with friends, he would always be the one to pay. He will be the one to do extra favors. When he was young at school, he offered to do homework for the popular kids. And the pretty girls, he gave away his special candies. When he grew up to be a successful businessman and wanted to date, he showed up on limos to pick up the girls and expensive trips, expensive gifts. In his business, he always thought that other people knew better than him. And so he just would go along with everything they would say. Because his limiting belief, unconsciously, obviously, it was unconscious, that he believed that he was not good enough for people to love and accept him for who he was. So he thought he had to buy their affection in order to be accepted. So becoming aware of this has empowered him to turn his life around. He is now more self-assured, sets healthy boundaries, and is learning to love himself. Because let me tell you something. If you learn to love and like yourself whole and complete, then the approval of others will not matter. So I hope you're starting to see how your patterns of behaviors can be your cues to what your underlying limiting beliefs may be. The good news is that the power limiting beliefs have over us can be dissolved, in my opinion, by practicing a few simple, consistent steps. First thing you need to do is to become aware of your unconscious thoughts and behaviors. You have to become curious as to why you do what you do and ask the right questions. So for example, if something keeps happening, ask yourself, what is the common thread? If you keep attracting the same events, circumstances, and people, then ask yourself, who is the common denominator? What do I believe about myself that leads me to attract the people that I do? Or ask yourself, what did I see or hear in my childhood that I am now replicating? Because we replicate what is familiar to our subconscious mind. So as you go through this process of discovery, because that is what it is, I urge you to pay attention and to write things down as you experience them. The second thing you're going to do is to become the observer of your behavioral patterns. And when you catch yourself engaging in a behavior that you want to change, stop and notice. Interrupt yourself each time you catch yourself thinking a negative thought. And let me tell you something, each time you interrupt that negative behavior is a victory for you. And over time, the more you interrupt, the less you're going to do it. Because it is in the awareness that you can begin to make alterations. Remember, it's not so much the behavior, it's not so much the belief that we want to get rid of, right? But the meaning that we assign to those beliefs. And so your aim is to change the behavior. And once you do that, the belief loses power over you. So if beliefs are thoughts and behaviors that we gave meaning to, then would you not agree that by changing the meaning, we change our belief? So you have to change the inner dialogue by offering your mind a new perspective, another possibility of what things could mean. So if your limiting belief, as an example, is that people don't like you, and you are at a party and you see a friend passes you by and doesn't say hi, your limiting belief will have you feel like, yeah, told you, she doesn't like you. Right? It makes you feel like the victim. But now try offering yourself a new possibility. Say to yourself, you know what, she's probably in a hurry and she didn't see me. And that's a more empowered way to live life. So try to think of another possibility that would allow you to start to change what you believe, right? As an example, myself, when I did this process, I changed my belief that everyone I would love would leave me. I don't longer believe that because I know it isn't true, right? But what I did was I went back to the root of those beliefs and I changed the meaning I had assigned to those events. Right? So my mother, it's not that my mother didn't love me. It's not that her absence was abandoning me. It's that she had to work hard to provide for me. My nanny did love me, but she was young and silly. But she did love me. And my dad and my parents did love me when they sent me to boarding school, right? Because they wanted the best for me. They wanted me to have the best education to give me the best chance at life. I also thought that I never really saw my parents say that I was not important or that I was not good enough. Right? That's not what we see. It's something that I created in my head. Unfortunately, as children, we often cannot reason to that extent. So it is our responsibility as adults to go back to the root of our beliefs and change the emotion we have attached to those events. And only then can you truly rid yourself of the beliefs and behaviors that don't serve you well. The fourth thing you can do is when you catch yourself thinking a limiting belief, replace it with a positive, empowering affirmation. But don't just say it, because if you say it, they are empty words. You have to feel them, because they have to make it past the stem cell for them to have any reaction in your body and in your mind. So if your limiting belief is that you have no luck, try telling yourself that I'm always at the right place in the right time. If your limiting belief is that money is scarce, tell yourself, I am abundant. I make money easily. I am prosperous in all my endeavors. If your limiting belief is feeling like a failure, right? Or that you're not capable enough, tell yourself there are no failures, only lessons, only steps, like Edison said. So I have given you a very condensed version of the process we actually do in the FMTG course. Typically, the students, through a 28-day process, they go through various layers that enable them to loosen up some of these beliefs. And also they do it in a very safe and non-judgmental environment where I am simply the facilitator. They are the ones who are actually doing the work and healing their lives. I love telling stories because I'm a strong believer that when we think something is impossible and then we see someone doing it, the impossible suddenly becomes possible for us. And so these are beautiful examples of everyday people that are doing extraordinary things with their lives and their healing. I had a student come with the limiting belief that she was not worthy of love because all her previous relationships had been abusive. She thought that maybe it was because there was something wrong with her. So she was afraid to open up and to attract new relationships. And she told me that before coming to the course, she had received 3 years of professional help and 7 months of inner work, and nothing shifted her love blocks. I'm happy to say that after working with FMTG, she is absolutely in love with her life and, more important, with herself. She has a new empowering belief that she is lovable and worthy of great love. But this could have never come for Charlene until she learned to love herself. Why? Because we attract what we reflect. Charlene is now meeting wonderful people and dating, as she says, high-value good men. I'm going to read you one of her many testimonials. FMTG helped me understand the story of my limited beliefs, and I was able to let go of that story. Understanding that these beliefs are connected to my energy, I changed my energy by learning to embrace my faults and quirks. I now know I am enough. All I want to become is already inside me. I've become the star of my own movie in life. Charlene, isn't that beautiful? Then I have Peggy, who used to look in the mirror and did not like what she saw. And she carried this dislike with her for too many years. And in the course, Peggy has done incredible soul-searching work. She has connected with her inner child and gone back in time to heal her childhood conditionings. She has opened her eyes to a new possibility and learned to be grateful for her life. In one of the sessions when she was supposed to connect to her mortality, when students are prompted to recognize that we are here on borrowed time, Peggy said to me that it was in that moment that she knew that focusing on what she thought she didn't have and feeling unworthy was actually wasting the gift of her life. Peggy is now incredibly fulfilled. For her, this was the greatest realization that she has brought out of her dark abyss. And I'm going to read you one of her quotes. I've been inspired 1,000 times to work on my body dysmorphia since I started FMTG back in March. This Wednesday, I showed my legs in public for the first time in 15 years. Not just anywhere, but on a rafting trip in a bathing suit. My boyfriend has never seen them in the light, only in candlelit bedroom. It takes so much bravery. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be free of my illness and my weight gained. That I look as fantastic as I do after all I've been through. No more shame, no more pain, no more hiding. When our desire to change is greater than our desire to hold on to our pain, we will grow. I'm ready to be free. I'm finally courageous enough now to take the first step. So grateful, Peggy Sue. I mean, that to me makes all the difference in the world. That is the one thing that keeps me waking up every day and doing this work, because I know it works. And if I can impact just one life, then I've done my job. Then I want to end with another final testimonial. It's a student. Her name is Margaret, who suffered from debilitating belief that she was garbage, that she was not good enough to keep. And the events leading to this belief happened in the 1950s. Margaret's mother ran away when she was pregnant with her. And the day her mom took off, her father was at work. So her mom left her 3-year-old and 14-month-old sisters tied to a chair and disappeared. So her mom checked herself into a mental hospital while still pregnant with Margaret, and she was born there. And it took some time for her father to finally find them. When he found them, he took Margaret and I guess he took her to an orphanage and left her there. Years later, she was adopted and raised by an amazing woman. And as she grew, she said she never wanted for anything. But Margaret still had this feeling that she was different, of not worth keeping and not belonging. Now, through the work she has done with FMTG, she was able to offer herself an alternative way of seeing her imprinted belief. She was able to rewrite the narrative she told herself and thus changed her belief. And I quote, "I have always appreciated and treasured my upbringing, but I have grieved not having a rightful place within a family, making up a story that somehow I wasn't good enough to deserve it. I felt that I was just lucky to have landed where I did after I was thrown away. Today, all that has turned around. I wasn't thrown away. I was given as a gift to a woman who was in no condition or position to have children of her own, who was the best possible mother for me, and I belonged to her. I now understand that it was not that my parents didn't love me. It's just that my parents couldn't give me what they dreamed for me to have, the kind of life that I deserved. So in that moment today, I went from thinking of myself as something to be thrown away to being a gift, from being unworthy to being precious, and from not belonging to being part of this wondrous plan to bring together souls that needed to be together. I just can't begin to say how grateful I am. Thank you, Waleuska. And when I read this, I have to tell you that I cried because it touched my soul. And I'm sure that it's touching your souls too right now. So as you go through this process of self-discovery, don't forget to express your gratitude for the new empowering beliefs that you are reinforcing and for the opportunity to evolve. You have the power to rewrite your own story. Just because you've had a belief your whole life doesn't make it true. Remember that limiting beliefs are not all going to change overnight. It has taken you years of conditioning to develop your current belief system. So it will take time and effort to replace them. So be patient. The key for all of us is to understand that these beliefs may show up even after we have done the work to heal them. So don't judge your success in never feeling them. The success is in realizing that we are experiencing a limiting moment, but now we have the awareness and the know-how to not let us stop us. So my wish for you is that you break free from that rope that ties you, so you may live the life that you are meant to live, one that is free of perceived limitations and obstacles. Thank you. For those of you who may be interested in finding more in-depth work with FMTG, you can find information at waleukalazo.com in the Gratitude Experiment. You can send me an email at waleuska@fmtg.us. And I welcome you all. Hopefully, I will see you in one of the courses, and I will be so proud to see your life transform. Thank you.
And for the group, one experience that when you're talking about this just came to mind, if that works for you.
Sure. We have to ask Maureen and Elizabeth. Do we have any other questions that came prior to that one? How do I
no, Waleuska, there are no questions, so you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Terrific. So, when going through the process and what you were speaking about today, a memory just popped into my mind, and I hadn't thought about this for years. Believe it or not, the memory that popped back to my mind, I was back in grade 6. And at that time, my teacher was someone that I looked up to and really respected her. And she herself had gone through the Depression. And oftentimes she would talk about how difficult it was for her growing up in the Depression and the challenges that her family had, how you have to be careful with money and just to watch that, and how things can be expensive. And so she went on in that theme, or that area, and it embedded in me at that young age. I started to question everything about money, and how much does it cost, and is it expensive, and can I afford this? And I realized that belief that was formed back when I was grade 6, however old I was, I guess, maybe 10, 11, I carried through with me all these years later, and was something that I hadn't realized, but had made its impact on how I viewed the world and how I look at things. And, I've done my own work on that, but would love your thoughts on, now that I've identified that, what do you suggest as to how I can put that one to bed and come from a place of abundance and prosperity in terms of my view of the world?
Thank you, Jeffrey. Yes, as I said, there are many beliefs that we carry that we didn't create, right? We simply adopted them because that's what we heard people say. So the first thing is to realize that it's not your belief, right? And to look at your own accomplishments and to realize that that isn't true, because you are very accomplished, right? So what you have to do is, each time you find yourself thinking in those limiting ways and thinking that things are scarce, to interrupt the pattern, right? And it's going to take time. But like I said, every time you interrupt yourself is a victory. And eventually what you'll start to notice is that you're going to have less of those thoughts, and because you constantly will be replacing them with something more empowering. And just always thinking abundance, because we attract the things that we focus on. So if you're constantly stuck in the scarcity mode, that's what you will attract into your life. But if you focus on abundance and always believe in your abilities and know and trust the universe that you will always be provided for, that's precisely what you will attract.
Thank you very much.
Waleuska, there is a question. Sorry, I missed it.
Go ahead.
It's from Christina Doronzo. She wants to know, if you believe that you are not abundant, how would you believe that you are just by saying the opposite?
Sorry, come again.
Okay, if you believe that you are not abundant, how would you believe that you are just by saying the opposite?
Well, here's the key. Just saying that you are is saying empty words, right? They're just affirmations that don't really make it through the stem cell to change our physiology, right? So what you need to do is really to start feeling it in your body. So you have to teach your body what it will feel like if you're already abundant, right? Depending on what you want to attract in your life. So when you're lying in your bed, and this is something that we go through in FMTG, it's how does it feel before you get out of bed to already be abundant, to already have all those things, to not have to worry where your next payment for your mortgage is going to come from, right? And the more you feel it in your body, because the emotions that we generate are the ones that ignite our ability to attract those things from the universe, from the quantum field. So it's all in the feeling. And every day, and it may not be easy at the beginning because you're so used to feeling, that you're not abundant. So it's going to take practice. But if every day you practice feeling abundant, that's exactly what you're going to attract, because your brain will go to work with whatever blueprint you're giving it. It's like you're a farmer and you go in the field. The earth doesn't care what kind of seeds you're planting. It's going to grow whatever you put in there, right? So if every day you're planting the seed of abundance and feeling whole and complete, that's what's going to grow. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, the next question is from Linda, and she wants to know, for those who were labeled with a behavior issue such as ADD or PTSD and have an inability to do things, what would your recommendation for them be?
I don't know if you saw my previous newsletter that went out, that it says labels are for packages, not people.
I love it.
So I refuse to have labels be put on us and our children. My daughter, many of you know her story, she used to suffer from selective mutism. And the doctors wanted to give her all kinds of labels and put her on medication. And we refused that, right? Because the brain is powerful, and what we hear, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what I would advise for those people that, especially in children, is to really find out what motivates them, right? Because it's not that we have those things. Those things all are rooted in a limiting belief. If you suffer from anxiety, if you suffer from depression, that comes from a rooted belief in your childhood. So yeah, I guess the first thing that I would do is not accept the label, right? And to tell yourself that you are normal.
Waleuska?
Yeah.
Sorry, we do, yeah, okay.
I did see your last post on labels, and I agree with you 100% that we are not labels. We should not be labeling ourselves. That a table is a table, but a person, every person has a core and a history, as you described. It's just some people are so attached to the labels that medical society gives them today, and they can't break free from that.
Absolutely, and that is a problem.
It's painful to see sometimes, depending who the person is and who they are in your life, let's say, and you want to help them.
Yes. Now you have to also realize that as you go through this process and you are, trying to become a better person and prune away limiting beliefs, is that our tendency is to want to also fix the people that we love around us because we see that they're suffering.
Right.
But that's not our journey, right? And we tend to take on pain and responsibility of other people, and we can't do that. So all we can do is focus on us and our reactions, and to know that if we become better, we can be better for them. And you have to understand that the mind is so powerful. If there is that power suggestibility, there are people that the doctor tells them that if they go for chemotherapy, these are the side effects that you may experience. And even before they go on a treatment and they're on their drive to the first session, they're throwing up. So that goes to show you how powerful our minds are.
Yeah.
And that's why I refuse the label. I don't even want to know. When I go to the doctor and they tell me that, like the first thing that I would ask is, what does this medication, what are the possible side effects? And when they tell me the list, it's incredible. Most people don't ask that. So yeah. I don't take it. right? Because I know myself, I know the power of my mind. And if I hear that I'm supposed to experience pain and throwing up and fever, I'm going to get it, because that's what I created in my own mind, in my own body. The mind is so powerful that convinces the body to either get sick or to heal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree 100%. And I know I tend to be a positive person, and I've done the FMTG 4 times. And the people around me have noticed differences, and it radiates to them, and they try to not imitate, but emulate my joyfulness.
Beautiful.
And at the same time, it teaches them, how to be more grateful. However, as you talked about limited beliefs, they have to find tools and methods for them to break their own limiting beliefs. I cannot do it for them.
Exactly.
Yeah. But at least, I could be present and happy in my life. And hopefully it will, shine on them, so they could see that there's a possibility that they could find the same thing.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that because we're dealing with if the walk away from here, guys, is that every belief we have, we formed in our childhood, right? And we learned it because that's what we saw our parents do or say, imagined what we do with our own behaviors to our children. Right? So we want to stop the cycle. Now that we're adults and now that we are responsible and we're trying to go back to heal ourselves, let's be mindful of what we do and say and the example that we give our children. Because a lot of times we are transferring our limiting beliefs to them.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next question is from Sagar Chahabra. I hope I said that right. And they want to know, how do you treat social anxiety?
I need to know a little bit more. Like, how does it show up in your daily behavior, I guess, right? Because anxiety typically comes from our inability to stay in the present moment, right? When we're constantly worrying about our past or our future, we experience anxiety. So without knowing more, it's hard for me to comment, but that would be typically it. So if we're anxiety, that means we're living somewhere out there and not in the present moment, because we can't control things. And anxiety is lack of control. Is that feeling that we're not able to control things.
Okay, would you like Sagar to
Sure.
expand on it? Sagar, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
So there's a problem. I have a problem in interacting with people, and so get got nervous very easily.
Sorry, it's very hard to understand.
Actually, I got very nervous in interacting with people, or in social parties and all. Problem in interacting with people. That's the issue.
Yes, I understand. Yes, you're like that example that I was mentioning, that in a social setting you may feel like you don't want to make eye contact, you don't say much, you feel anxious, and that goes to what you have to do is try to remember where that came from when you were a little boy, right? Because when we feel that way, we have this tendency that if we speak up and say something dumb or silly, we're not going to be liked or respected, right? So we tend to put a lot of emphasis on being liked by other people. And so without knowing, much about your behaviors, what I would say is that when you learn to feel more secure on who you are and love yourself as you are, then the opinions of others won't count. And because they won't count, you won't be so afraid to speak up and engage in a social setting because you like yourself, right? Every relationship we have, it's a direct reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves. So the more secure you feel on who you are, if you like yourself, you're not going to be afraid to speak up. You're not going to have that anxiety, right? Because you don't care. If they like you, great. And if they don't, so what? And the bottom thing is that in life, no matter what we do, there's always going to be someone who's not going to like us. And that's okay. Right? So this is a process that you need to go through and, uncover layer and layer and get to the root of where that came from.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
The next question is from Sudanesa, and she says she has a problem in interacting with people, which I think is pretty close to what you've just said.
Yes. It's
So,
that, your unlimited belief under that behavior may be that you don't feel, smart enough or good enough to, say something that others will approve. And again, this goes back to yourself. If you approve of yourself, do you really need the approval of others? Right? So the work starts with each and every one of us to learn to like ourselves.
The final question, Waleuska, is from Sudanesha, and she wants to know, is it possible to learn some beliefs, limiting beliefs in a later age, as in when they grown up?
Absolutely. There are some beliefs that you're going to get rid of in a second, and others will take some time. And we are constantly forming new beliefs. Okay, they do come from childhood, and the more seated ones are the ones we learn from our parents in our environment. But every day we are making up some new beliefs. So yes, you can change them at any point, right? If you say to me, my husband is so loyal, he would never do anything to hurt me, and that's a belief that you carry all throughout your marriage, and then you come home and you open your bedroom door and you see your husband in bed with another woman. Is that belief that you had going to stay with you? Probably not, right? In that split second, that belief is going to fly off the window. So it's the same thing with other beliefs, right? So
and
yes,
that's it. I don't see any more questions.
Anything else, guys? Well, I hope you found this information useful. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, go ahead, Nish.
Yeah, I wanted to know till what age does this belief system of other people throwing on us impacts our life, or we stop after a certain age to embed those beliefs into our system?
Well, we know through science that the formative process happens between 0 and 9, right? But it doesn't mean that it stops there, because they continue to be reinforced through our lives until you choose to become aware enough to change them.
Yeah. And also a lot of people's limiting beliefs. I had some limiting belief, and I had 25 years of asthma. So how many such beliefs could result in some kind of an ailment that really is connected to our belief system?
There are a lot of illnesses that are connected to our belief system. Not so much to our belief system, but through the experiences we've had. And the emotional charge, right, that we attach to those events. In the case of Catherine, her suffering of depression and anxiety was tied to her dad abusing her.
Right, yeah.
So she had to go back in time and go, as in FMTG, one of the exercises is you have to go back as your own self. You picture yourself as your little boy or as that little girl, and you go back and give that child all the love, all that attention, all the safety that she needed when she was little, right? Only then can we start to change the adult in us. Because the minute we change the child, we change the adult, right? That child is the one that continues to run our daily
Run our daily lives.
actions. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Waleuska, can I talk?
Yes, of course.
I do not have a question, but I want to share something. Can I share something?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I was suffering from this anxiety problem and this acceptance problem. I mean, right from my childhood, my elder brother, I have an elder brother who would always treat me as a, you are a small brother, you keep out of this, you stay away, you sit home, and he would never take me out anywhere. He would never let me get involved or nothing of the sort. So I had that problem right from childhood. And it also eventually led me to this anxiety problem. And my cousins, whenever we meet, I mean, my cousins are very, very highly intellectual, very highly educated and successful people. So I always used to feel little down, kind of, I don't belong to, I could not relate myself to that crowd. But now, since the few years, I have changed my attitude, and I have started thinking that I don't need their certificate to be good or bad or this or that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that has helped me get rid of my anxiety problem and this acceptance problem. I don't care whether they accept or they don't. I am what I am, and I love myself.
Exactly.
And I don't need certificate from anyone in this world as to who am I, how intelligent, how successful, how good, how bad I am. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, this attitude has really helped me a lot to come out of this kind of problems, interacting with people and relating with certain crowd and anxiety problems.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and now I'm very clear. I mean, you have right to your opinion. You can treat me as an idiot. I don't care. And you don't even have to tell me. You can do whatever you can think whatever you want to think about me. Keep it with you. I am what I am, and I am happy with what I am.
Yes. And this goes back to my point, right? That, to cure that anxiety and that feeling of not being worthy or good enough for others to have others like us, it's when you like yourself, you don't need the approval of anybody else.
Yeah.
I don't need a, I mean, I don't want even to know. I mean, I'm not asking for your opinion. So keep your opinion to yourself and be happy with it.
Yes.
You be happy and let me be happy. Simple. Anyway, thank you, Waleuska. It was a wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And again, thank you so much for sharing your Sunday with me. And I look forward to your feedback, and I will try to post the Q&A on the FMTG course and the community. And I will re-record me giving the presentation, and we will link it together so you will have it, since I forgot to click on record.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you so much.
Bye.
Have a lovely day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Enjoy your
Bye.
Sunday, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Ciao,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you, Waleuska.
Sunday.
Thank you.
Yeah, you